Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. I'm just holding this phone in my hand, so I hope it turns out. I'm out here at the pavilion where I play the piano for Sunday morning worship, and everybody packed up. Had a nice early morning service. I packed up the keyboard. My wife's waiting in the car, talking to her brother, so she's all happy. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the Paris Olympics. Let's see if I can get this in the other hand. And the opening ceremony, I found that opening ceremony kind of disturbing, and I don't want to overemphasize it. Sometimes it's just an opening ceremony is an opening ceremony. And I really only watched it kind of a little bit after I heard the controversy about it. I just wanted to focus on a couple things that I noticed when I watched it with the very kind of cursory watching. One was the way the torch went through Notre Dame Cathedral, which obviously has just recovering from fire. And the other of the many things, I'm not even going to say that much about the Last Supper, but I think they showed the Mona Lisa in the Seine River. Obviously, the idea of destroying the arts and also a piano on fire. That was the thing that offended me the most. Set a piano on fire. Reminded me of the George Orwell book Burmese Days, which is set in Burma in the last days of British India. And the piano had become kind of controversial in India because it was a symbol of Western imperialism. So this one Burmese family had a piano in their home, and that was seen as sort of caving into the Brits. But when the piano is such a symbol of the excellence and the evolution of not only musical instruments and stringed instruments. It's a piano percussion instrument. I never bought that. It's a stringed instrument, but all right, well, whatever. But it shows the evolution. The piano is such the pinnacle, really, of musical instruments, at least acoustically. As much as I love guitar, violin, the piano is really the king of music. I mean, it is the main instrument, really, of any musical instrument. And to show that burning, it was very interesting to me, and I thought there was this kind of subtext. Like I said, I don't want to make too much out of it, but you start with a torch going through Notre Dame Cathedral. I'll tell you something about church burnings. There are church burnings. Sometimes, lightning hits a church or whatever, and it's just a lot of times these old churches are dry. The Notre Dame Cathedral had a lot of people think of it as a stone cathedral, and of course the Middle Ages was an age of stone carving. Didn't have all that much to do with bricks or a lot of things, but all those beautiful cathedrals and other types of buildings they built in the Middle Ages were cut stone. So a lot of people, when they see Notre Dame Cathedral, they think of cut stone, but really that upper part of the cathedral, they used to call it the forest, it's all wood. The Notre Dame Cathedral was a ton of wood, and to have an Olympic guy in a black, kind of evil-looking, he looked like an evil monk to me, like something out of either that or he was kind of clad in black. He looked kind of like a monk, but anyway, running around through that cathedral with a torch, I just thought that was, if it was meant to symbolize something else. But what I wanted to say about church burnings, there are a lot of church burnings in France, and they've never really come out definitively and said what started the church fire in Notre Dame. But you look up Saint-Sulpice. Now, Saint-Sulpice is the church that is also in Paris that they actually used in the Da Vinci Code, or that's mentioned in the book, the Da Vinci Code. And I don't think that they would. I forget if one of the churches that they wanted to use the Da Vinci Code, the church would not allow them, so they used another church. But anyway, Saint-Sulpice, I think, is the church in the Da Vinci Code, if I'm not mistaken, either the book or the movie. And that burned a couple weeks ago. You know what? My hand's getting tired. That church actually burned a couple weeks before Notre Dame Cathedral. Was that in 2019 when Notre Dame Cathedral burned? And I remember reading about that at the time, and they said there were a lot of church burnings in France, and that France was having all these problems with church burnings, and Saint-Sulpice was one, and there were several other churches that were burned that were definitely arson. And then like a week or two after that article came out, Notre Dame Cathedral burned. So I've always been kind of suspicious of that fire. I know it was workplace construction. It was an accident. Someone threw a lit cigarette into a bunch of kerosene in a 900-year-old dry wood building. I don't know. It's a hell of an accident. But anyway, I thought the symbolism of that was a little jarring at this time. And then the idea of the arts, I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to make too much out of it, but having a really desecration of two Leonardo da Vinci's, assuming it was the Last Supper they were kind of spoofing or lampooning. Then now I know they came out and said, no, it was a Bacchanal or Dionysian banquet or something, but it looked an awful lot like the Last Supper to me. But what really caught my attention was the Mona Lisa in the Seine River, kind of like the detritus of Western civilization, and then a piano on fire. And I just kind of wanted to conclude with this thought that there are people who hate art. And they hate art for a lot of philosophical reasons. You know, there have been periods in history where a lot of art was destroyed. I mean, there's so many, but like in the Bible, you had like Asa the idol smasher who smashed all the idols. They had the iconoclast struggle in the Byzantine Empire in the 8th century. In the Roman Empire, of course, the barbarians famously looted their way all the way through the Roman Empire. You know, looting and pillaging is tried and true. So when we see it in these cities, just remember that's as old as time. You know, people go into big cities and loot them, like Troy, Jericho. You know, that's like in the Bible. You take a city and you loot everything that's not nailed down, kill what you don't want, marry what you do want, and destroy everything else that's, you know. And there is a lot of destruction, and a lot of art gets destroyed in that. You know, in the Bible, they talk about the Philistines, and we have that, I think my wife's honking on it, we have that term on our vocabulary today, you're a Philistine, which usually means you don't like art. Now, kind of ironically, I remember that term being a part of the discourse in America, you're a Philistine, meaning you didn't like art, and at that time it was applied to Jesse Helms. Now, a lot of you probably remember Jesse Helms. And Jesse Helms didn't like the Piss Christ and some of the homoerotic art that the federal government, National Endowment for the Humanities, was funding. And so he was called a Philistine, being against art. And that was back in the late 80s. And all the Democratic Party was very defending of the arts. And kind of like now with books and libraries, they were, you know, all the Republicans were seen as Philistines. This is not a political talk. I'm just giving some sort of detached observations, hopefully detached. But, you know, over the years, we've seen a lot of destruction of art and removal of art. And, you know, sometimes things can be moved or whatever, but fine art should never be destroyed. And that is something we're seeing more and more. Look at these climate change activists. They go around and they glue themselves to some of the finest paintings in the world. John Constable, Van Gogh, I think Da Vinci, right? Wasn't one of them the Mona Lisa? Didn't they throw mayonnaise or something on the Mona Lisa? Let me tell you something. You do that, that's a threat to art. You know, you might say, well, we're just trying to make a point or, you know, get the conversation started. If you glue yourself to a painting, that's sort of saying, you know what, this painting's not worth anything. You love this painting so much, it's like a false idol. And there are people, I think, that hate art. So I mentioned a couple times in history where art has been attacked, often for political or cultural reasons. Of course, you look at countries like North Korea or Iran, where at least a lot of what we call the arts would have trouble flourishing because of the repressive nature of the society. So art is, to some extent, fine art, excellent art, is a product of human spirit and human creativity, which cannot thrive in a repressive environment. Although I guess you could be a mercenary and just, you know, pay for the highest bidder, which, you know, is fine. But the true excellent art that comes from your spirit, that's hard to flourish in a repressive society. I always like to use the example, the Beatles could not have come out in a lot of countries in the world, not only for sort of different cultural reasons, musical evolution reasons and so on, but also just the the Beatles could not come out in North Korea or China or the old Soviet Union. And a lot of these societies are societies where they have destroyed art. The Chinese destroyed 1/3 of their art. The Cultural Revolution. North Korea, look at the Taliban, the USSR, where they turned churches into stables, and they had horse manure in the old altar niches. And you look at that, it's just terrible. And yeah, people do go through periods where they destroy art, and I think that's a very disturbing trend, and I don't think that's one that we should ever celebrate. But I see it a lot, I mean, the obvious one would be Confederate monuments. I mean, most people that I know now think we should remove all those Confederate monuments. And it's one thing to put them in a museum, but when they destroyed a lot of those Confederate monuments, those were some of the best statues in the country. They melted down a bronze statue of Robert E. Lee. Was that a Valentine or an Alexander? I mean, it was just one of the best statues in the country. And those are people that can't see the excellence of art beyond the artist. Now you might think, well, no, this was a misrepresentation of history, it's a false version of history or whatever. That was art, A-R-T, art. And you want to do something? That art is made with the hand, like playing the piano. Can you take a brush, a bunch of goop pigment colors on a little easel and paint the Mona Lisa? I doubt it. I can't either. That's excellence with this and this, your hands and your brain. And I personally think, I've always thought that a lot of people who aren't creative are destructive. And I hope they're not becoming a majority in this country, but there are a lot of people who are not creative, they are destructive. And by the way, it's pretty, destructive is a way to make money too. You can be destructive. Looting is destruction, right? That's how there are whole parts of the world, that where historically at least people have lived by looting, raiding their neighbors' villages, like the old tribes of North America. They took turns stealing each other's horses. I mean, there are a lot of places in history where it was like that. So looting and destruction is tried and true. You can make your living off it. But those societies are going to have trouble producing a Mona Lisa. They're going to have trouble producing John Constable, the Haywain. They're going to have trouble producing a Beethoven Moonlight Sonata, because that excellence comes from freedom, from support, and a cultural heritage that you can build upon. And if you destroy that cultural heritage, then you don't really have anything left to build on. And I really think that a lot of people, that these people now that hate art, they're not that different than the peasants who used to smash statues in the Middle Ages or the Reformation, or the barbarians who used to go into Roman cities at the end of the Roman Empire, destroy library. Anything they saw that was valuable, they took, and anything they saw that was beautiful that they couldn't understand because they couldn't make it themselves, they often destroyed. So next time you see people running around smashing beautiful statues that are 120 years old, hey, North America's got some nice statues. We're not up there with, Italy, where they have Michelangelos, Bernini's, Donatellos, But we're up there. We've got some beautiful statues for a younger country. And you have people that want to run around and smash art. That is very, very scary. These people are bad people, and they are destructive people. And that doesn't mean that being bad and destructive can be a lucrative way to live your life, but it leaves the rest of us who aren't that way in trouble. So I don't know. I think there's something weird going on in our culture. I'm going to associate it more with what some people call the left. I don't like the terms left and right, because I don't like having those terms applied to me. But let's say the left, or whatever. There is sort of an anti-art, at least anti-Western art aesthetic, and I thought I saw some of that at the Olympics. By the way, Paris is a great city. Loot it, They also had a picture of or a depiction of Marie Antoinette with their head off. And I know the French love to celebrate the revolution, but they did behead a woman. Arguably her only crime was being the Queen of France. They killed her husband, whose arguably only crime was being the King of France, unless you count all the things the King of France did as crimes. But that was the kingdom. They killed the king, the queen, almost certainly his son, and about 20,000, 15 or 20,000 other people, and they destroyed a boatload of art in the French Revolution. So I think the Paris Olympics, they were even kind of alluding to the French Revolution. I saw the guy that put that opening ceremony together, and he definitely, had some French revolutionary themes. I think they started with the kind of Les Miserables motif, and they started, they went by the concierge prison where Marie Antoinette was held prisoner prior to her decapitation. But there are people that destroy art. I think a lot of people in the first world, the Western world, we take all this stuff for granted. You go to a park, there's some beautiful statue in there and a bench. Then one day it's full of homeless people. I feel sorry for homeless people, by the way. I think I have some views on the homeless. But, then it starts to go down the tubes. Then you have something where they destroy these statues. That's very terrible. Where all the public monuments that we've created to beautify our world, to tell our story, whether you agree with that version or not, let me tell you, if you think a statue tells a false image of history, make your own freaking statue. Make your own. Oh, you can't? Oh, why? You don't have any talent. You don't have any skill other than shooting off your mouth. Make your own statue if you find these statues so offensive. So I didn't really like the way they had a piano burning. I didn't like the way they had the Mona Lisa in the Seine. I didn't like the way they had flames going through Notre Dame at a time when there's a lot of fear of churches burning. I didn't like the way they had Marie Antoinette's head. I didn't like the way they had Marie Antoinette's head. That was a horrible thing. That was a horrible thing. Why would they celebrate that? You think January 6th was bad? Look at the French Revolution. Oh my God. Why would they celebrate that? I don't know. I mean, violence is part of history. I get that. And political causes often result in violence, but you should never celebrate violence, I would say. You can honor the people who fight, and you can honor and remember victims of violence, but I'm not sure we should ever celebrate violence in and of itself like a bloodthirsty kind of thing. And that some of the people that destroy art and the people that had that Mona Lisa head, they're bloodthirsty. I mean, I don't think I'm using that word lightly. They're bloodthirsty, and they're destructive. And I'm sure they would say that. I'm sure they would say that about the people they disagree with. But that's my take: is these are bloodthirsty, destructive, ignorant people. If you can't play a piano, and by the way, the piano is kind of fading out of music. Actual piano playing, like two-hand, traditional piano playing, I would say is less and less common. Although you see a lot of keyboards around. You not only can't you play the piano, but you're not even really sure what the piano does, or you're not familiar with piano music. You don't have any appreciation of it. Then the next thing you know, you see this beautiful Steinway piano, and it just pisses you off. Like, why is this thing $50,000? Why does everybody think it's such a great thing? I can't play it. I don't understand it. It makes you feel stupid, so the next thing you know, you want to burn it. And that's what vandals do. That's what destructive people do. And creative people develop their talents, and they don't run around destroying other people's art. If you've got an opinion, express it in the arts. So I didn't want to read too much into the Paris Olympics, and I hope I'm not mischaracterizing but that was sort of my take on it. And the destruction of art and history is not good. If you think that's good, I think you're wrong. And if you're the kind of person who wants to run around and destroy a lot of statues and art and music and create a repressive environment, then you are a bad person. And I don't like to judge people, so maybe I shouldn't say that, but to me, that's a bad person. You know, in the Bible, the Philistines came in during the Judges period. If you know the Bible, I know the Bible pretty well, actually, if I do say so myself, although I'm not a minister. But the Philistines came in the Judges period, with Samson and, some of those stories. And they were, to finish that story, they were seen as sort of crass and materialistic. That was one thing. The one thing about the Philistines is they were actually materialistic. You don't get a sense of this in the Bible, but they actually had bigger buildings, nice, probably better weapons. We can assume maybe materially speaking, in some ways, we're superior to the Hebrews. But at least the way we remember it, I'm not saying that the Philistines were bad and the Hebrews were good, but the way it's kind of remembered is that the Philistines did not have the Bible and they did not have the ethical heritage and the moral philosophy, and not just in a moral sense, but even just the idea of literacy and writing and all the human aspects that come out of a culture of literacy. And so, rightly or wrongly, I'm sure somewhat wrongly, but we've always remembered the Philistines as a kind of symbol of materialistic people who don't understand art and also don't appreciate art, and in fact, like the Philistines in the Bible, destroy art, like the Spanish did with all that Aztec art, By the way, that's looting, you get a lot of money from that, but to have a depiction of the Mona Lisa, which is probably one of the most important paintings in the world. I've always thought it was a little overrated, but okay, we're just gonna give it its due. It's the Mona Lisa. To have that be depicted as sort of a ruined, thrown in some river like it was trash, that symbolized something very disturbing to me. And it was a culture of materialism, a culture of greed, a culture of people who want to barge in and take the arts and laborers of centuries and destroy them, and or just take them, melt them down and make them their, just use them up. And then when they're gone, the world be impoverished. So I definitely didn't agree with that. I'm not trying to like I said, I don't want to mischaracterize anything. I'm just speaking here without notes or anything, because it was kind of a chill morning and got a little time. My wife's starting the car. But thanks, God bless.